I used to think love would arrive in grand gestures, candlelight, eye contact that lingers, a man who listens. And when I met him, 12 years older, charming in that knows what he's doing kind of way, I thought maybe, just maybe, this was it. He called me brilliant, said I had an old soul, told me he'd never met anyone like me. We had one night, but the way he looked at me, it felt like a beginning. Turns out, to him, it was a pit stop, a boost to the ego, a story he'd forget. But I didn't forget, because that night, it changed how I saw myself, how I saw men, and what I thought love was supposed to feel like. This is a story about blurred lines, power plays, and what happens when someone mistakes your heart for a trophy. It's about the first time you realize they never loved you. They loved what you made them feel. And yeah, I sent an email to his wife, not for revenge, but for truth. If you've ever been someone's learning experience, you're not alone. And if you have a story to tell, big or small, we want to hear it. Click the pinned link in the comments to share anonymously. We'll feature real stories from real people because someone out there needs to hear yours. For every 1,000 views, we're donating $1 to support women navigating toxic power dynamics because healing shouldn't be lonely, and love should never feel like a warning sign. Stay with me. This one matters. I met him at a marketing workshop in Santa Fe. I was the youngest in the room, clutching my little notebook like it was armor, surrounded by people who had job titles longer than my resume. And then there was him, 40, maybe 41. Calm voice, steady posture, kind of a Paul Rudd energy if Paul Rudd wore nice shoes and made you feel like your ideas were worth something. We ended up at the same breakout group, talking about brand storytelling. I don't remember what I said, but I remember how he looked at me, like I'd just cracked the code on something important. He didn't flirt, not in the way guys on campus did. There were no cheap lines, no trying too hard jokes, just genuine interest. He listened when I spoke, asked real questions. He made space for me, and that felt rare. I wouldn't even call it a crush. It was more like relief, like someone had finally tuned in on the right frequency. It felt like safe attraction. Like maybe being with someone older meant being seen, not sized up. What I didn't realize then, what I see now, is how easy it is to mistake validation for connection. When someone gives you attention you didn't know you were starving for, it can feel a lot like love. At the time, though, it just felt like maybe, finally, I belonged. I met him at a marketing workshop in Santa Fe. I was the youngest in the room, clutching my little notebook like it was armor, surrounded by people who had job titles longer than my resume. And then there was him, 40, maybe 41. Calm voice, steady posture, kind of a Paul Rudd energy if Paul Rudd wore nice shoes and made you feel like your ideas were worth something. We ended up at the same breakout group, talking about brand storytelling. I don't remember what I said, but I remember how he looked at me, like I'd just cracked the code on something important. He didn't flirt, not in the way guys on campus did. There were no cheap lines, no trying too hard jokes, just genuine interest. He listened when I spoke, asked real questions. He made space for me, and that felt rare. I wouldn't even call it a crush. It was more like relief, like someone had finally tuned in on the right frequency. It felt like safe attraction. Like maybe being with someone older meant being seen, not sized up. What I didn't realize then, what I see now, is how easy it is to mistake validation for connection. When someone gives you attention you didn't know you were starving for, it can feel a lot like love. At the time, though, it just felt like maybe, finally, I belonged. He picked a place with candles and low jazz. Not the kind of restaurant where you rush through dinner. the kind where conversations linger, where you're meant to stay. He looked at me across the table, slow and steady, and said, "You make me forget I'm married, and that scares me." I should have walked out right then, but I didn't. Because when someone older says something like that, with that much weight, that much restraint, you start to believe it's not about cheating. You think it's about conflict. You think maybe you're the exception. We walked for blocks after dinner. No one was drunk. There was no music swelling, no sudden pull. It was quiet, intentional, like we were both aware we were about to cross something. That night, he touched my face like he was memorizing it. He kissed me like he wanted to freeze time. He whispered things, not just "you're beautiful," but "where have you been?" and "I wish we had met earlier." And I believed it, all of it. For him, it might have been lust, but for me, it felt like a door opening, connection, validation. Something intimate, yes, but also real. This wasn't just a night, not for me. It was a page I thought we were both writing. Turns out, I was the only one holding the pen. The sun came through the curtains like it had no idea what had happened. I woke up alone. His side of the bed was cold. No note, no coffee, no "last night was" anything. Just the hum of the minibar fridge and a silence that felt louder than any goodbye. I stared at my phone. Nothing. So I texted first. Just a light, hopeful, "Morning. Hope you got home safe." An hour later, he replied, "Hey, I think you're sweet, but this can't go anywhere." No punctuation, no warmth, just that. I reread the message at least 10 times, thinking maybe I missed something. Like maybe there was a joke in there, or a just kidding, or an apology. But no, that was it. That was all I got. The same man who once asked me what made me feel most alive now couldn't even bother to ask if I was okay. And I learned something, not just about men, about moments, about how people can make you feel like the center of their world one night and like a typo the next morning. That was my first real heartbreak. Not because he left, but because I finally understood what it feels like when someone treats your vulnerability like it's temporary. A lesson in expectation, in silence, and how sometimes not saying anything says everything. Let's pause here, because this is the part we never talk about loud enough. He was 40, married, well-versed in the art of saying just enough without saying too much. He knew exactly how to drop breadcrumbs without ever promising the whole loaf. She was 21, bright-eyed, still learning that not every deep question means someone wants to build a deep life with you. He got what he wanted. She lost what she thought was the start of something. And here's where it stings. When men in their 40s chase validation from women barely out of college, we call it a midlife phase, a confidence boost. He's just figuring things out. But when those same women believe the attention means something, we call them naive, clingy, too emotional. How did we get here? How did we normalize grown men seeking emotional comfort from younger women and then blame those women for getting emotionally invested? This isn't about villainizing age gaps. It's about power gaps, about how experience can be used not just to protect, but to persuade, and sometimes to manipulate. She thought it was a beginning. He treated it like an ego refill. One of them walked away lighter, the other heavier. And we owe it to every woman who's ever been told, "You should have known better," to start asking why he didn't. A week later, I was still checking my phone, still hoping maybe he'd explain, that it meant more than what he made it seem. Then someone sent me a link. A Reddit thread. Anonymous, of course. But his writing, it was him. Down to the grammar and the way he overused em dashes like he was writing poetry in a boardroom. She was young, hot, but selfish, he wrote. Just wanted an ego boost. I knew it couldn't go anywhere, but I needed to feel something again. Let me repeat that. I was the selfish one. He needed to feel something again. He turned me into a metaphor, not a person, not someone with dreams and bruises and a heart that still believed people meant what they said. Just a prop in his little midlife crisis narrative. I wasn't the girl who shared stories over dinner, or the one who let her guard down for once, or the one who believed in magic in the middle of Manhattan. No, in his version, I was furniture, decorative, disposable. And that's what broke me. Not the silence, not the lies, but realizing he never really saw me, only what I reflected back to him. I wasn't a mirror. I was a human being, and I will never again be the reflection someone uses to feel better about their own emptiness. I didn't want to be that girl, the one who blows up a marriage just to make a point. I wasn't angry anymore. I was disappointed in him, in myself, in how easy it was for someone twice my age to mistake manipulation for mentorship. But what haunted me most wasn't the night we spent together. It was learning from a mutual friend that I wasn't the first. Apparently, there'd been others, young, new in town, looking for guidance, not games. And I kept thinking, what if she didn't know? So I wrote the email. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't revenge. It was just the truth, plain, uneasy, unflinching. I'm not proud of what happened. I fell for someone who knew exactly what to say. I thought it was something special. He made me feel like it was. I'm telling you this not to hurt you, but because I think you deserve the truth from someone who has nothing to gain. I didn't ask for a reply. I didn't need one. I just needed to stop pretending that silence was the noble thing. Sometimes silence is just complicity with someone else's lies. She didn't send that email to get even. She didn't want drama. She had nothing to gain, but she gave the truth anyway. Because sometimes doing the right thing doesn't reward you. It just stops you from becoming someone you don't want to be. There's this myth that people like her are homewreckers, but let's be honest, the wrecking starts long before the truth gets told. What ruins a marriage isn't a 21-year-old's email. It's the 40-year-old who knew he had a ring on his finger and still whispered promises he didn't plan to keep. It's easy to blame the outsider. It's harder to hold the insider accountable. This is about emotional accountability, about not letting someone rewrite the story just because they're older, louder, or better at pretending. She wasn't looking to hurt anyone. She was practicing restorative honesty, the kind that doesn't erase what happened but refuses to keep lying about it. And let's be real, if telling the truth costs you your comfort, maybe comfort was built on someone else's silence. That's not peace. That's just polished betrayal. And she chose to polish her integrity instead. For him, it was just one night, a fleeting thrill, a story he could half joke about over whiskey. But for her, it was the night she woke up, not because of what he said, but because of what she started hearing in herself. She started therapy 2 weeks later, not because she was damaged, but because she finally understood she deserved better. Better than someone who only saw her as a mirror. Better than silence after vulnerability. Better than being treated like an intermission in someone else's midlife crisis. She journaled. She cried. She forgave herself for believing it was love, because when no one teaches you about boundaries, admiration can look a lot like affection. And slowly, she began to rebuild, not to glow up for revenge, not to prove him wrong, but to show herself what it means to be respected, even if you have to give that respect to yourself first. I used to think love was being chosen, she said. Now I know love is being respected. And that one night, it wasn't a love story. It was a mirror, not of him, of her, and what she refuses to accept from anyone ever again. Everyone has a first heartbreak, but it's what we do after that pain, how we grow, how we protect the next version of ourselves that defines us. She could have let it break her, could have let it harden her, but instead, she chose something bolder: clarity, boundaries, self-respect. This wasn't just a story about a man who walked away. It was about a young woman who walked forward. So if you've ever been reduced to a lesson learned in someone else's highlight reel, if you've ever been made to feel like a detour in someone's journey to self-discovery, you're not alone, and your story matters. Share it anonymously using the pinned link in the comments. We'll tell these stories with care, with dignity, and with your privacy fully protected. For every 1,000 views, we donate $1 to nonprofits helping young women navigate toxic dynamics and reclaim their voice. Let's build a world where experience doesn't mean power, it means responsibility. Because healing isn't just personal, it's communal. And sometimes the bravest thing you can say after being used as someone's ego boost is simply, "Not anymore."